Hi guys, so we know that 2021 was a tough year for businesses based in Great Britain. Well, 2022 is going to be even more challenging. What can we expect at ports in a few days' time? Well, there may be a sudden shock, or it could be a slow, drawn-out pain, but it will not be good either way. From January the 1st, or in reality January the 3rd, as the 1st is a public holiday and the 2nd is a Sunday, the 3rd will see the real impact of Great Britain's post-Brexit status as a third country. GVMS, rules of origin, and non-deferred customs declarations are all happening in 2022. Since January the 1st, 2021, the UK has in a sense postponed Brexit checks. This was in order to keep trucks moving. Sovereignty took a back seat over flow. But from January the 1st, the UK will start carrying out similar checks to those the EU has been doing since January this year. There is a caveat here. Physical checks and veterinary certificates have been kicked down the road to July the 1st. But what will happen in January? Well, full customs declarations. Previously, import declarations were deferred up to 175 days. This will end in January. Businesses in Britain will have to complete real-time declarations as the products enter the UK from the EU. Food and plant products will need to be entered into a system before arriving in Great Britain. This also covers animals, food and feed. EU drivers taking freight into Britain will need to have paperwork pre-authorized before driving onto ferries. And worst of all, rules of origin requirements will come into full force. Any British businesses that want to take advantage of zero tariff access on goods coming in from the EU will need to have these goods accompanied by a supplier declaration which proves that they are sufficiently EU made in order to benefit from the tariff-free status. The same takes place for exporters to the EU. The Goods Vehicle Movement Service, or GVMS, is considered a weak spot for potential delays as drivers will need to have a code from this system in order to be allowed onto ferries. This was something highlighted in a video I uploaded earlier this year where a member of the cold chain sector described a scenario where EU drivers or suppliers making one small mistake could see an entire consignment blocked. Boris Johnson's government doesn't believe that this will be of concern, as most large haulage firms in Europe have likely trained up all their drivers, but a risk does still exist with smaller operators. Rules of origin, as I said before, could be one of the biggest headaches. This would require EU exporters to Britain to show that about 50% of their goods are originating in the EU to benefit from zero tariff access to the market. Self-declaring is possible, but the goods need to be accompanied by the correct documentation. A problem is that if there's a query on some products, this means the tariff may end up having to be paid. But as the tariff needs to be paid by the importer, an exporter, for example, declares that a product is 50% or more produced in the EU, and it turns out to be not the case, the importer will be hit. This could have serious implications for smaller operators. Once again, Brexit was sold as something to help small and medium-sized enterprises, but it's harming them the most. Like at the beginning of 2021, there was a steep learning curve, and for some businesses in Europe it may not be viable to ship to Britain, and for some UK firms it may not be viable to import from the EU. According to the Office for Budget Responsibility, the drop in trade with the EU could be as much as 15%. This would be detrimental to many businesses in Britain. There would likely be a recovery, but it could come too late for some. Brexit is full of unknowns, so a lot of this comes down to whether EU-based businesses and hauliers will consider these rules too cumbersome and will opt just to avoid Great Britain altogether. How businesses on both sides of the channel adapt is key here. Will they find ways to deal with this Brexit-induced red tape? While January may not be a massive shock, what is expected is higher prices, lower levels of choice, and longer delays for certain goods. It looks like 2022 is going to be rocky either way. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.